The brand on Nora Parker's shoulder stung like the devil's kiss as she stumbled through the arid New Mexico territory. Her wrists chafed raw from the ropes that had bound her until she'd managed to escape just before dawn. Arizona Territory, 1875. The unforgiving sun beat down on Nora's fair skin as she stumbled forward, her torn dress offering little protection against the elements. She'd been walking for hours. Maybe days' time had lost all meaning since she'd fled from the men who had captured her, branded her like cattle, and planned to sell her to the highest bidder at a settlement near the border. Her throat burned with thirst, her vision blurring as she squinted at the horizon. Was that a mirage or salvation? A small homestead in the distance, a thin line of smoke rising from a chimney. With her last ounce of strength, Nora pressed forward, praying whoever lived there would show mercy to a woman in her condition. She made it within 50 yards of the modest cabin before her legs finally gave out. As darkness claimed her vision, she heard the pounding of hooves and a deep voice calling out. Strong arms lifted her from the ground, and she caught a glimpse of concerned blue eyes before consciousness slipped away entirely. "Easy now, miss. You're safe." When Nora awoke, she found herself lying on a simple bed in a sparse but clean cabin. A cool cloth rested on her forehead, and her parched lips had been moistened. She tried to sit up but winced at the pain that shot through her shoulder where the brand marred her skin. "I wouldn't move too quick if I were you." The voice came from a tall man sitting in a chair near the foot of the bed. He wore simple clothes, denim pants, a cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and a worn leather vest. His face was weathered from the sun, but not unkind, with a strong jaw shadowed by stubble and those same blue eyes she remembered from before she'd collapsed. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice barely more than a rasp. The man stood and brought her a cup of water. "My ranch, such as it is. Name's Nathan Hayes. Found you about to become buzzard food out on my property." Nora took the water gratefully, drinking it down in gulps until Nathan gently pulled it away. "Slow down there. Too much at once will make you sick," he advised. "What's your name, if you don't mind my asking?" She hesitated. Trust wasn't something she gave easily anymore. Nora Parker." "Well, Miss Parker, you've been through something terrible, that much is clear." His eyes flickered to the visible edge of the brand on her shoulder where her torn dress had been carefully mended and replaced. "That burn needs tending, and those wrists of yours need salve. I've sent for the doctor from town, but he's about 20 miles out, so it might be tomorrow before he arrives." Nora pulled the blanket up higher, covering the brand. "Why are you helping me?" Nathan's expression hardened slightly. "Because decent folk help those in need, and whoever did that to you." He paused, jaw tightening. "Well, they're not decent folk." Over the next few days, as Nora recovered her strength under Nathan's careful attention, she learned more about the quiet rancher. He ran a modest cattle operation with just two hands brothers named Jose and Miguel Rodriguez, who lived in a small bunkhouse nearby. Nathan had come west after the war between the states, looking to start fresh away from the bloodshed and memories of Tennessee. "Lost my folks in the war," he explained one evening as they sat on his porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in brilliant reds and oranges. "Pa to a Yankee bullet, ma to grief not long after. Didn't see much point in staying." Nora nodded, understanding loss all too well. The doctor had come and gone, treating her wounds and leaving salves and bandages. Nathan had respectfully left the room during the examination, but the doctor's grim expression when he'd emerged told her that he'd seen the brand, a crude circle with an X through it, the mark of the Griffin Gang, notorious for their trafficking of women to mining camps and border towns. Nathan hadn't pressed her for details about what had happened to her, and Nora was grateful. She wasn't ready to speak of it, to relive the horror of being kidnapped from the stagecoach, of watching the other women being sold off one by one while she fought and earned herself a branding for her trouble. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need," Nathan told her, his voice gentle. "Town's not far, Silver Creek, about half a day's ride. Once you're stronger, I can take you there if you've got somewhere to go." Nora stared at her hands, the rope marks on her wrists fading but still visible. "I was headed to Tucson. My uncle has a dress shop there. He wrote that he needed help after my aunt passed." Nathan nodded. "Tucson's a long way still. You'll need more time to heal before making that journey." A comfortable silence fell between them. There was something soothing about Nathan's presence, a steadiness that made Nora feel secure for the first time since her ordeal began. When he spoke, his words were measured and thoughtful. When he moved around her, he was careful to telegraph his actions, never making sudden movements that might startle her. That night, as Nora lay in the bed Nathan had given up for her, he slept on a pallet in the main room. She heard voices outside. Rising carefully, she moved to the window and peered out into the moonlit yard. Nathan stood talking with Miguel, their voices too low to make out clearly, but their postures were tense, and Miguel kept gesturing toward the north. After a few minutes, Nathan nodded grimly and headed toward the barn. Minutes later, he emerged with his horse saddled, a rifle in its scabbard. Before mounting, he checked his revolver, the moonlight glinting off the barrel. Nora's heart raced. Was he riding out because of her? Had her pursuers been spotted? She quickly dressed in the clothes Nathan had provided, a simple skirt and blouse that must have belonged to someone else once, and made her way quietly to the main room. The door opened just as she reached it, and she nearly collided with Nathan. He looked surprised to see her up. "Going somewhere?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Nathan's expression was grim. "Just a precaution. Miguel spotted some riders about 5 miles north near Coyote Ridge. Could be nothing but with the Griffin gang known to be operating in these parts." He trailed off. "It's me they're after," Nora said, her voice barely above a whisper. I escaped. I'm the only one who can identify them." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "Then it's all the more reason for me to ride out and make sure they don't get any closer." He hesitated, then added, "Jose will stay here with you. He's a good shot." Nora grabbed his arm. "No, you can't go out there alone. There are at least 6 of them. They'll kill you." "I'm not riding to fight them," Nathan assured her. "Just to observe. If it is them, I'll report it to the marshal in Silver Creek." But Nora wasn't convinced. "Please," she said, "don't risk yourself for me. I should leave. I've put you in enough danger already." Nathan's expression softened. "Miss Parker, Nora, you're not going anywhere in your condition, and I'm not the type of man who turns away someone in need because things get difficult." His voice took on a determined edge. "Anyone who branded you, who bound you like an animal, will have to deal with me if they want to get to you again." The conviction in his voice left no room for argument. Nora felt something stir within her, a warmth she hadn't expected to feel again after what she'd endured. "I'll be back by dawn," Nathan promised. "Lock the door behind me, and don't open it for anyone but me or the Rodriguez brothers." After Nathan rode out, Nora couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the dark landscape, jumping at every sound. Jose kept guard outside, occasionally making rounds of the property, his rifle always ready. True to his word, Nathan returned as the first light of dawn crept over the eastern horizon. Nora rushed to the door when she heard his horse approach, relief flooding through her at the sight of him, unharmed. "It was them," he said grimly as he dismounted. 4 men camped in the foothills. I recognized one from the wanted posters in town, Griffin himself. Nora's blood ran cold. "Silas Griffin," Nathan nodded, leading his horse to the water trough. "You know him. He's the one who—" She couldn't finish the sentence, her hand unconsciously moving to cover her branded shoulder. Nathan's jaw tightened. "I sent Miguel to fetch Marshal Davis from Silver Creek. Should be here by midday." But the marshal never arrived. Instead, as the sun reached its zenith, they spotted a cloud of dust approaching from the direction of town. Nathan grabbed his field glasses and scanned the horizon. "Riders," he said, his voice tense. "5 of them. And they're not the law." Nora felt the blood drain from her face. "It's them. They've found me." Nathan turned to her, his expression determined. "Get inside. There's a cellar beneath the kitchen floorboards. Hide there." "What about you?" she asked, fear clawing at her throat. "I'll handle this." He checked his revolver again. "Jose, Miguel, get ready." The brothers nodded grimly, checking their own weapons. Nora grabbed Nathan's arm. "Please don't fight them. They'll kill you all." Nathan covered her hand with his own. "Miss Parker, some things are worth fighting for. A woman's freedom is one of them." His eyes held hers for a long moment. "Now please get to safety." Reluctantly, Nora retreated to the cabin, lifting the trapdoor in the kitchen floor that Nathan had shown her earlier. The cellar was small and dark, but she climbed down and pulled the door closed above her, leaving just a small crack to see and hear through. The sound of hooves grew louder, then stopped. Male voices called out, too indistinct to make out clearly. Then Nathan's voice, calm but unyielding. "This is private property, gentlemen. State your business." A harsh laugh followed. "We're looking for a woman. Runaway. Brown hair, green eyes, about 20 years old. Seen anyone matching that description? Can't say that I have," Nathan replied evenly. "But even if I had, I wouldn't be inclined to help men who hunt women like they're stray cattle." "Now look here, cowboy." The voice grew menacing. "That woman is our property. She's got our brand on her shoulder to prove it. No human being is property." Nathan's voice had turned to steel. "Not anymore, not in this country. You sanctimonious son of a—" The man was cut off by another voice, smoother and more controlled. "Mr. Hayes, it is Hayes, isn't it? I'm Silas Griffin. Perhaps you've heard of me." "I've heard you're wanted in 3 territories," Nathan replied. "For kidnapping, among other crimes," Griffin chuckled. "Entrepreneurship is often misunderstood. Now I know the girl is here. One of my men saw you bring her in days ago, so let's dispense with the pretense, shall we? Hand her over and we'll be on our way, no harm done." "And if I don't?" Nathan challenged. "Then harm will certainly be done," Griffin replied, his tone conversational but chilling. "To you, to your Mexican friends there, and to the girl. After all, damaged goods still fetch a price in certain establishments." Nora's heart hammered in her chest. She should reveal herself, save these men who had shown her nothing but kindness. Yet her legs refused to move, terror rooting her to the spot. "Let me be clear," Nathan's voice rang out, unwavering. "The woman you're looking for is under my protection. Anyone who wants to take her will have to deal with me." A tense silence followed. Then Griffin spoke again. "I see. Well, Mr. Hayes, it seems we're at an impasse. Perhaps a demonstration of our resolve is in order." A gunshot cracked through the air, followed by a cry of pain. Nora stifled a scream, her hand pressed to her mouth. "That was a warning," Griffin called out. "The next one goes between your eyes unless you bring out the girl." "And this is my warning," Nathan replied, his voice deadly calm. "Get off my land now, or none of you will leave here alive." Another shot rang out, then another. Soon the air was filled with the sound of gunfire. Nora cowered in the cellar, tears streaming down her face as she prayed for Nathan's safety. The shooting seemed to go on forever, punctuated by shouts and the whinnying of frightened horses. Then, suddenly, silence. Nora held her breath, straining to hear any sound that might tell her who had prevailed. Footsteps approached the cabin, heavy boots on the wooden porch. The door opened. More footsteps, now inside the house, moving across the floor above her. "Nora." Nathan's voice called out, strained but alive. "It's safe now." She pushed open the trapdoor with trembling hands and emerged to find Nathan standing in the kitchen, a bloodied bandana wrapped around his upper arm. His face was smudged with dirt and gunpowder, but his eyes were clear and focused. "Are you hurt?" she asked, rushing to his side. "Just a graze," he assured her. "Jose took one in the leg, but he'll be all right. Miguel's unharmed, and Griffin." His men, Nathan's expression darkened. "Two dead. Griffin and another wounded. The fifth surrendered." He guided her to a chair, his hand gentle on her back. "The marshal showed up just in time with a posse. Seems Miguel got through after all." Relief washed over Nora, followed quickly by guilt. "This is all because of me. You could have been killed." Nathan knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "This is because of them men who think they can own people, who hurt and use them, not because of you." Tears welled in Nora's eyes. "Why would you risk so much for a stranger?" "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. Then, with a slight smile that transformed his solemn face, he added, "And you're not exactly a stranger anymore, Miss Parker." Over the following weeks, as summer gave way to autumn, Nora recovered fully from her ordeal. The trial of Silas Griffin and his surviving gang members was scheduled for the spring circuit court, and Marshal Davis assured her that, with her testimony and the evidence of the brand, they would hang for their crimes. Nathan had insisted she continue to stay at his ranch until she felt ready to travel to Tucson. "No rush," he'd said casually, though something in his eyes suggested he wasn't eager to see her go. Nora found herself in no hurry to leave either. She began helping around the ranch, cooking meals that were a vast improvement over Nathan's basic fare, mending clothes, and even learning to ride one of the gentler horses Nathan kept. "You sit a horse well," Nathan commented one afternoon as they rode the boundaries of his property. "Ever ridden before? My father had a farm in Missouri," she explained. "Nothing as grand as this, but we had a few horses. I used to ride with him when checking the fields." "What happened to the farm?" he asked. Nora's expression clouded. "Drought took our crops 3 years running. After Pa died, there was nothing to keep it going. I worked as a seamstress in St. Louis for a while, then my uncle wrote about the opportunity in Tucson." She paused. "That's when I took the stagecoach west and, well, you know the rest." Nathan nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Life has a way of taking unexpected turns, sometimes for the worse, sometimes." He glanced at her, something warm in his gaze. "Sometimes for the better." As they crested a small rise, Nathan reined in his horse. Before them stretched a valley, golden in the autumn light, a small stream winding through it like a silver ribbon. "It's beautiful," Nora breathed. "I thought to build a proper house down there someday," Nathan said quietly. "When I first bought this land, I had dreams of a real home, not just a bachelor's cabin." "Why haven't you?" she asked. He shrugged. "Never seemed worth the effort just for myself." His eyes met hers. "A house needs a family to make it a home." Something unspoken passed between them in that moment, a possibility neither was ready to voice, but both felt nonetheless. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Nathan cleared his throat. "I received a letter from your uncle today." Nora looked at him in surprise. "You wrote to my uncle," Nathan nodded. "After the attack, I thought he should know what happened, that you're safe but delayed." "That was thoughtful," Nora said, touched by his consideration. "What did he say?" "He's relieved you're all right. Says the position at his shop is still open, whenever you're able to make the journey." Nathan hesitated. "He also said something interesting, that he'd been concerned about your traveling alone, especially after hearing rumors about women going missing from stagecoaches. Nora frowned. He never mentioned such concerns to me. Apparently, he wrote a second letter warning you not to come until he could arrange safer passage, but you must have already departed St. Louis before it arrived. The realization that her ordeal might have been avoided with better timing hit Nora hard. But then, had events unfolded differently, she would never have met Nathan. "I suppose everything happens for a reason," she said softly. Nathan's hand found hers on the porch railing, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "Perhaps it does." The touch sent a flutter through Nora's chest. Since her rescue, she'd found physical contact difficult, memories of rough hands and rope burns making her flinch from even the most innocent touch. But Nathan's hand on hers felt right, safe. As autumn progressed, their moments of closeness grew more frequent, hands brushing while passing dishes at dinner, Nathan's steadying grip at her elbow as they navigated rocky terrain on horseback, an occasional light touch to emphasize a point in conversation. Nora began to recognize the signs of something blooming between them, the way Nathan's eyes sought hers across a room, how he seemed to find reasons to be near her, the care he took to make her comfortable and happy. One evening, as the first chill of approaching winter filled the air, they sat by the fire in comfortable silence, Nathan whittling a piece of wood while Nora mended one of his shirts. "Winter comes early in these parts," Nathan commented. "Another few weeks and we might see snow." Nora looked up from her sewing. "I should write to my uncle, let him know I'll be delayed until spring." Nathan's hand stilled. "You're planning to stay through winter," she met his eyes steadily. "If that's all right with you." A slow smile spread across his face. "More than all right, Miss Parker." That night, Nora lay awake longer than usual, thinking about how her life had changed. The horror of her capture and branding would always be with her, a scar both physical and emotional. But here, in this simple cabin with this honorable man, she'd found something unexpected: peace, security, and perhaps something more. The first snow came in early December, blanketing the landscape in pristine white. Nora woke to find Nathan already up, stoking the fire to ward off the morning chill. "Come see," he said, a boyish excitement in his voice as he gestured toward the window. Wrapping a shawl around her shoulders, Nora joined him, gasping at the transformed world outside. "It's like a painting." "Worth the cold, isn't it?" Nathan said, his breath fogging the glass. Nora nodded, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, of the warmth radiating from his body beside hers. When she looked up, she found him watching her, his expression soft. "Nora," he said quietly, "I know you plan to leave for Tucson when the weather clears, but I find myself hoping you might consider staying." Her heart quickened. "Staying?" "Yes." He took a deep breath. "These past months having you here. It's been the happiest time I can remember since before the war." "I've been happy too," she admitted. Nathan turned to face her fully. "I know it might be too soon with all you've been through, and I'm not a man of great means or fancy words, but I care for you deeply. More than I thought possible to care for anyone again." Nora felt tears prick her eyes. "Nathan, you don't need to answer now," he said quickly. "Just know that there's a place for you here, always, not as a guest, but as—" He faltered. "As what?" she prompted gently. His blue eyes met hers, vulnerable yet hopeful. "As my wife, if you'd have me." The world seemed to still around them. Snow continued to fall outside the window, but Nora was aware only of Nathan's face, the earnest expression he wore, the way his hands trembled slightly as he awaited her response. In that moment, the memory of the brand on her shoulder, the mark that had made her feel tainted, damaged, seemed to fade in significance. Here was a man who had seen her at her most vulnerable, who knew her darkest experience, and still looked at her with such tenderness and respect. "Yes," she whispered, surprising herself with how right the answer felt. "Yes, I would have you." Nathan's face transformed with joy. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, he raised a hand to her cheek. When she leaned into his touch, he bent down and brushed his lips against hers, a gentle, questioning kiss that she returned with growing confidence. When they parted, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I promise you, Nora Parker, no one will ever hurt you again, not while I draw breath." "I know," she said, and realized she truly believed it. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Silver Creek, with Jose and Miguel as witnesses, along with a few of Nathan's neighbors and the kindly doctor who had treated Nora's wounds. The bride wore a simple but elegant dress that Nathan had ridden 30 miles to purchase from a seamstress in the next county. As they exchanged vows, Nora felt as though her life had been divided into 2 parts, before Nathan Hayes and after. The woman who had stumbled onto his property, half dead and terrified, seemed like someone else entirely from the one who now confidently promised to love and honor him. Their wedding night was approached with tender patience on Nathan's part. He understood that intimacy might be difficult for Nora after her trauma, and had assured her they would take things at whatever pace she needed. But as they settled into their new shared bedroom, the main room now converted to a proper living space, Nora found her fears lessening in the face of Nathan's gentle respect. When he kissed her, she responded with an enthusiasm that surprised them both. Later, as they lay together in the darkness, Nathan's fingers traced delicate patterns on her arm. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. Nora nestled closer to him. "Happier than I ever thought I could be again." "Good." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Because I intend to spend the rest of my life making you happy, Mrs. Hayes." The name, her new name, sent a thrill through her. Not because she needed a man's name to feel complete, but because this particular name represented a choice she had made freely, a future she had chosen for herself. Winter passed in a cocoon of domestic contentment. They settled into married life with surprising ease, as though they had been meant to find each other. Nathan taught Nora more about ranching, and she introduced improvements to the cabin that made it feel more like a home. In January, Nathan began work on the house he had spoken of, the one in the valley by the stream. He hired additional hands for the cattle so he could focus on building, working whenever the weather permitted. "It won't be ready until summer at the earliest," he told Nora as they reviewed his sketches one evening. "But I want you to have input on every aspect. It will be your home as much as mine." Nora studied the plans, adding suggestions here and there: a larger kitchen, windows positioned to catch the morning light, a covered porch wrapping around 2 sides of the house. "And this room?" she asked, pointing to a smaller space near the master bedroom. Nathan's expression softened. "I thought perhaps a nursery, someday, if you wanted." The idea of children had not been discussed between them yet. Nora had wondered if her experiences had left her too damaged for motherhood, too afraid to bring children into a world where such cruelty existed. But looking at Nathan's hopeful face, she felt a new kind of yearning take root. "I would like that," she said. "Someday." As winter gave way to spring, Nora received a letter from her uncle expressing both congratulations on her marriage and understanding about her decision to remain in New Mexico territory. He mentioned that business was going well and invited her and Nathan to visit whenever they could make the journey. "We should go," Nathan suggested when she shared the letter with him. "Perhaps in the fall, after the house is finished and the worst of summer's heat has passed." Nora agreed, though the thought of traveling again brought a flicker of anxiety. Nathan noticed her expression and took her hand. "We'll go together," he promised, "and take the train, not the stagecoach." His understanding warmed her heart. It was one of the countless ways he showed his love, not through grand gestures, but through constant awareness of her needs and fears. In April, the circuit judge arrived in Silver Creek, and Nora testified against Silas Griffin and his remaining men. Standing in the crowded courthouse, facing the man who had branded her like property, was the hardest thing she had done since her escape. But Nathan sat directly behind her, his steady presence giving her strength. When asked to show the brand as evidence, Nora hesitated only briefly before exposing her shoulder to the judge and jury. The collective gasp in the courtroom was followed by murmurs of outrage. Griffin's face showed no remorse, only a cold calculation that sent a chill down her spine. "Mrs. Hayes," the prosecutor asked, "can you identify the man who branded you?" Nora pointed directly at Griffin. "That man, Silas Griffin. He said it was so I would always remember who I belonged to." Nathan's hand tightened on the rail of the spectator bench behind her, but he remained silent, letting her speak her truth. The trial lasted 3 days. In the end, the jury deliberated for less than an hour before returning guilty verdicts. Griffin and his second-in-command were sentenced to hang. The others received long prison terms. Justice, cold but satisfying, had been served. As they rode home afterward, Nathan asked, "How do you feel?" Nora considered the question carefully. "Relieved, like a chapter has closed." She looked at the landscape passing by, the spring wildflowers dotting the prairie, but also ready to focus on our future, not the past. Nathan reached across to squeeze her hand. "That's my brave wife." By June, the new house was taking shape, its framework rising from the valley floor like the skeleton of a dream becoming reality. Nora often brought lunch to Nathan and his workers, watching with pride as their home grew day by day. One such afternoon, as they sat in the shade of a cottonwood tree sharing a simple meal, Nathan noticed Nora seemed distracted. "Something on your mind?" he asked. She hesitated, then met his eyes with a smile that held a secret. "I've been waiting for the right moment to tell you. I went to see Dr. Wilson yesterday." Nathan immediately looked concerned. "Are you ill?" "No," she said, taking his hand and placing it gently on her still flat stomach. "I'm going to have a baby." The look of wonder that transformed Nathan's face was something Nora knew she would remember until her dying day. Joy, disbelief, and love all mingled in his expression as he processed her words. "A baby," he repeated, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Our baby." Nora nodded, her own eyes filling with happy tears. "Due in January, the doctor thinks." Nathan pulled her into a gentle embrace, cradling her as though she had suddenly become infinitely precious and fragile. "Oh, Nora," he whispered against her hair. "Thank you." She laughed softly. "I believe you had something to do with it, too." He pulled back to look at her, his expression growing serious. "Are you happy about this?" Truly understanding his concern, Nora nodded. "I am. I was scared at first, but now I'm just grateful for this life growing inside me, for you." She touched his face. "For the family we're making together." Nathan kissed her then, pouring all his love and joy into the gesture. When they parted, he said, "We need to finish this house before winter. Our child deserves the best home we can provide." True to his word, Nathan redoubled his efforts on the house construction. By September, they were able to move in, though some finishing work remained to be done. The new home was everything they had planned, spacious, yet cozy, with large windows that filled the rooms with light and views of the surrounding landscape. Nora took particular pride in the nursery, which she furnished with a beautiful cradle Nathan had crafted himself and soft linens she had sewn during the summer months. As her pregnancy progressed and her body changed, She sometimes caught herself looking at the brand on her shoulder in the mirror, no longer red and angry, but a pale scar that would always be part of her story. One evening, as she stood examining it, Nathan came up behind her, wrapping his arms gently around her expanding middle. "Does it still bother you?" he asked quietly, his eyes meeting hers in the mirror. "Less than before," she admitted. "Sometimes I forget it's there until I see it." Nathan pressed a kiss to the marred skin. "It's just a mark. It doesn't define you." Nora leaned back against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. "I know that now." She guided his hands to where their child kicked vigorously. "This is what defines me now, being your wife, becoming a mother, building our life together." As winter settled over the land once more, Nora's time grew near. Nathan rarely left her side, arranging for additional hands to manage the ranch work so he could be available when she needed him. Dr. Wilson visited regularly, assuring them that everything was progressing normally. On a cold, clear night in mid-January, with stars scattered like diamonds across the black velvet sky, Nora went into labor. Nathan sent Jose riding for the doctor, while he helped Nora through the increasingly painful contractions, his calm voice anchoring her through the waves of discomfort. Dr. Wilson arrived just in time. After hours of labor, as dawn broke over the eastern horizon, their daughter entered the world with a lusty cry that filled the room and their hearts. "She's perfect," Nathan whispered, tears streaming unashamedly down his face as he held his daughter for the first time. "Absolutely perfect." They named her Clara, meaning bright and clear, because she had brought such light into their lives. She had Nathan's blue eyes and a dusting of dark hair that promised to be as rich as her mother's. As Nora watched Nathan cradle their newborn with such gentle reverence, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the terror and pain, yes, but also the courage, the healing, and the love that had transformed her life. The brand on her shoulder would always be there, a reminder of what she had survived, but it was no longer a mark of ownership or shame. Instead, it had become a testament to her strength, to the truth that some wounds may scar but need not define us. Nathan caught her watching them and smiled, a smile filled with such love and contentment that it made her heart swell. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. "That I'm exactly where I'm meant to be," she answered truthfully. 5 years later, the summer sun beat down on the Hayes Ranch, now a prosperous operation with additional acreage and a growing reputation for quality cattle. The house in the valley had expanded with the addition of a wing that included a second bedroom for their son, Caleb, born 2 years after Clara. Nora stood on the porch, watching as Nathan taught 3-year-old Caleb how to sit on a gentle pony, while 5-year-old Clara called out enthusiastic advice to her little brother. The scene filled her heart with a contentment she never would have believed possible during those dark days of her captivity. The sound of an approaching wagon drew her attention. Shading her eyes, she recognized Miguel returning from town with supplies and mail. Among the packages he unloaded was a large crate addressed to Nora. "From your uncle in Tucson, Mrs. Hayes," Miguel explained as Nathan helped him carry it inside. They had visited Tucson twice now, building a warm relationship with her uncle who had delighted in meeting his great-niece and great-nephew. This package, however, was unexpected. When opened, the crate revealed a beautiful sewing machine, the newest Singer model, along with fabrics, threads, and a letter. Nora read it aloud to Nathan. "Dearest Nora, knowing your talent with a needle and thread, I thought this might be useful for the business you mentioned starting. The women of Silver Creek deserve fine dresses made by skilled hands, and I can think of none more skilled than yours. Consider this an investment in Hayes dressmaking. With love, Uncle William." Nathan grinned. He's not wrong. The samples you've shown around town have already generated interest. Nora ran her hand over the gleaming machine. What had begun as making clothes for her children and a few pieces for neighbors had grown into talk of opening a proper dress shop in Silver Creek. With the town expanding due to the new railway connection, the timing seemed perfect. I could convert the old cabin into a workshop, she mused. It's not far from town and with the children in school soon. Nathan wrapped an arm around her waist. I think it's a fine idea. You've always said you wanted to build something of your own. She leaned into him. I never thought I'd have the chance after. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Well, Mrs. Hayes, Nathan said, kissing her temple, you're a woman of many talents and uncommon strength. I'm just grateful I get to witness all you accomplish. That evening, after the children were asleep, Nathan and Nora sat on their porch swing, watching as the first stars appeared in the deepening blue sky. His arm was around her shoulders, her head resting comfortably against him, a posture as familiar as breathing after 5 years of marriage. Do you ever think about how we met? Nora asked suddenly. Nathan's fingers traced idle patterns on her arm. Often. I thank God every day that you found your way to my land. Even though it brought trouble to your door, he chuckled softly. The kind of trouble that led to you, to Clara and Caleb, to this life we've built. I'd welcome that kind of trouble again in a heartbeat. Nora smiled. When I escaped from Griffin, I was just running away from something terrible. I never imagined I was actually running toward something wonderful. Life has a way of surprising us, Nathan said thoughtfully. When I came west after the war, I was just looking for peace, a quiet place to exist. I never expected to find love or build a family. He tightened his arm around her. But the moment I saw you, half dead though you were, something in me knew my life had changed forever. Because you had to play hero, she teased gently. Because I recognized something in you, a spirit that wouldn't break, no matter what had been done to you. He turned to face her, his expression serious in the fading light. You know, that day when Griffin and his men came, when I said anyone who touched you would have to deal with me, I meant it with everything in me. But the truth is, you saved yourself first. You escaped them, you survived. I just helped finish what you started. Nora had never thought of it that way before. She had always credited Nathan with her rescue, her second chance at life. But he was right, she had freed herself from captivity, had walked for days across the harsh landscape, had refused to surrender to despair. Perhaps we saved each other, she suggested. You from loneliness, me from fear. Nathan smiled. I like that version. He leaned in to kiss her, a kiss as sweet and tender as their first. I love you, Nora Hayes, every day more than the last. And I love you, she whispered against his lips. My protector, my partner, my home. As night fully claimed the sky and the sounds of the ranch settled into peaceful quiet, Nora reflected on how far she had come from that desperate day when she had collapsed on Nathan's land. The brand on her shoulder had faded to a pale scar, rarely noticed and never hidden in shame anymore. In its place were other marks, Nathan's gentle touches, her children's sticky kisses, the weight of a wedding ring, the feel of fabric under her fingers as she created beautiful things. These were the marks that truly defined her now, marks of love freely given and joyfully received, of a life built choice by choice, day by day, in the company of the man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and had chosen to stand beside her come what may. And in the end, wasn't that the greatest freedom of all?